G'day. That counter's not the right time. Welcome to episode 58 of Kingdom Business TV. Well, thanks for joining us, America. All right, so we're probably the most organised we've ever been in the lead up to this one, and we still started like a disaster. Happy days. What's wrong? Can't hear anything? Are you okay? All I can see is pirouettes and giggling. Okay, good. Hi. Just chat amongst yourselves, people. Super cool. Thank you for joining me. And what are we doing here? We are talking all things business through the lenses of the kingdom, so that we can build businesses, fund our churches, fund projects, and be the hands and feet of Jesus in the marketplace. To do that, we need to plumb the depths of Scripture and learn a bit about it. And then we also need to be super practical, because one of the things about the faith is we've taught stuff that doesn't translate to the marketplace for a long, long time, and we have to undo a little bit of that work and redo it. So we're going to talk Scripture. I got a bunch of questions here that have come in from you guys that I'm going to answer. And by the way, if you've got a question, then put your phone number in the comments below and we'll call you, or simply put your question in the comments below and I will answer it as I go. Interesting little scripture. I quite like just grabbing something out of Proverbs and putting it into context. So we're going to look at Proverbs 16:32. 16:32, and it says this: "He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who can take a city." He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit is better than he who takes a city. Have you ever found that it is a hard task to rule your spirit? It is a hard task to take what's happening into captivity and rule it in such a way that you get what you want from you. Have you ever realized that the way the world bombards you with good, bad, and the ugly, that it's very easy to be up and down and all over the place and be foggy? Why? Because you're not ruling your spirit, okay? We are talking here about being able to manage your state. I don't mean the state you live in, right? I mean your mental state, the state you live in does matter, right? Because if you're in New South Wales, for example, you'd be fully embarrassed about the state of origin. However, I guess I mean the mental state that you're playing in. And so, I'm just talking a little bit here out of experience, having, starting business at 19 and now 40, so, 20, 21 years. Over that period of time, you can't stay in business that long if you don't learn how to rule your state, rule your spirit, rule your mind, because otherwise, the whole journey will make you implode, and you won't. So I just wanted to go through a couple of tips and things that I do to help rule my spirit and have a little bit of fun with that. All right, there's two ways I want to look at this. And I know you might be having a bit of an issue with my definition of spirit. To me, when it comes to the marketplace, the mind is connected to the spirit. The mouth is connected to the spirit. Like what happens internally happens externally. It might start inside, but to be able to rule our spirit, I think we have to learn how to rule our responses to things. I mean, it talks about anger, so it talks about the mind and default thinking and the way we handle ourselves. So I'm going to look at it through those lenses. If I'm going to rule my spirit, there's one thing that I need to learn to rule, and that is the ups and downs of life, okay? The ups and downs of life. And I've spoken about these before on here, but one of the things that I do is I used to be one of those people that was blown by emotions. When things are going well, I'm happy. When they're tanking, I'm sad. The problem with that kind of thinking is that, that happens all the time. Like there's good, like you have your best day and your worst day in the same day. So if you're driven by the highs and lows, you will just have ulcers because it's a really stressful way to go. And so, I've said to you guys, you have to learn to even those out. Like if Craig was to turn up at my office this afternoon and say I'm leaving Business Greenhouse, I wouldn't be that upset. Okay, I'm just kidding. But I would be. I'd be like, okay, that's annoying, but I wouldn't be devastated. I would hope that he's moving on to something that he really enjoys, and that, that we've helped him along the way. That would be my ultimate goal. But also, if he came in and said, I'm doing some leadership training with a Fortune, ASX 200 business, and it's our large contract, I'd also be, yay, that's wonderful, high five. But I wouldn't be like bouncing off the walls either, because I've learned how to even out those highs and those lows, so that otherwise they just take too much of a toll on you, okay? You want to control the controllables, all right? So a lot of that stuff is not controllable, so that's kind of the way I view it, all right? So that's the way that I rule my highs and lows. I don't get too massively excited about the highs. I certainly don't beat myself up over the lows, and I've found a way to do that equilibrium. Here's another way you need to rule your spirit, though, right? It's the long journey. This is the one that trips most people up. It's the fact that they don't have in their mind, they don't know how to rule their spirit to be able to last the distance in business and go through the 7, 10, 12, 15 years it takes to build something great. You may be a flash in the pan from a business perspective. You might be able to get some runs early. You might be an influencer that was able to charge $2,000 for a post, but that's not a business that's going to be around in 7 more minutes. So to actually build a business that has a brand attached to it, that matters in the marketplace, that can go through a financial crisis, because most of the industries available today, and most of these quick pop-up businesses, they're going to be gone the next time there's a dip in the economy. To build something great that is top of mind and sustainable and puts a team around you takes a long time. And this is where most people get unstuck, because they don't have the fortitude to be able to last the distance. And so how do you rule your spirit to be able to stick at it for long enough? Well, for me, this is basically how I see it. You could live in one of 3 places right now in your mind, okay? So if I just put a dotted line down here and I call this today, then, and this is the future and this is the past, then some people, some of you guys, would be living out here somewhere, okay? They're living in the future in their mind, okay? They are, they're always thinking and operating and charging hard towards a much bigger business. That's very noble from a vision perspective, but you will be consistently, permanently, in perpetuity frustrated because you're never where you want to be, okay? So you will actually be like, you'll start work on Monday morning, and by Friday, because you're not there, you're frustrated, and you'll live in this cycle where you're beating yourself up. You're permanently, despondent and probably angry and horrible to be around, because you're not where you are. You are so far in the future that you're frustrated that you're not catching up quick enough. Or you could be living in the past, and if you live in the past, you'll live in regret. Okay, you'll be all the what ifs and this shouldn't have happened and playing a victim and woe is me. Okay. So the place to live, obviously, is in the moment. And the irony is that if you can learn to live in the moment and be present, you'll do a better job at building a business anyway, because you'll be more present with your team, more present with your sales staff, more present with the kids at home, more present. You'll just be better. It doesn't mean you can't look down the road and plan, but you don't live there and you're not frustrated, okay? That, to me, is how I rule my spirit, because I have tricked myself into having a long-term goal, because when I first started, I was the same as everybody else, which is just, whatever, frustrated or just would be put off by the length of the journey. The only way I know how to trick myself into being okay with, me being in this business or in any business or in business generally for the next 40 years. Think about that, 40 more years. So I think I'll be in business 40 more years before I hit second gear and start doing big deals. The way I trick myself into doing that is I live in the present, and then the other thing I understand is the fact that success is an exponential curve. You're going for a long time, and then you get a little upkick, and then you go for a bit longer, and you get a bit more of an upkick, and then you go a bit longer, and you get a bit more of an upkick, and then before you know it, it takes off in spite of you. Well, most people will quit here, and here, and they'll never get that little upkick, to be able to see the process. But you have to have gone through those years before you get those years. And so the way I trick myself is I'm not interested in being the biggest I can possibly be. I'm interested in building bigger than last year. I want to see momentum. I want to see progress. I want to see expansion. And as long as that keeps happening and it compounds, it's inevitable that one day things will explode. I want this year, I have a plan for where I want it, but I want it to keep moving. And that's where I know we're going to be. Like sitting here today, I know that I want Business Greenhouse to be on all the major continents of the world. I want offices everywhere. I want to be dealing with, thousands of clients, hundreds of team, I want to have global impact, running seminars. I want to be advising governments. I want to be all those things. Well, I could be frustrated that I'm nowhere near that. Or I could rely on the process. I need to chase down bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the process will look after itself. That's the things that I do to trick myself into ruling my spirit, ruling my mind, ruling my body, so that I know that I can give myself the best chance of getting to where I want to be. All right, we've got some questions that have come in. All right, I've got a question here that's come in from Blake. I'll answer that one first. How should a business tithe, if at all? Blake, it's a solid question. It's probably the question that I get the most as I travel the country, speak at seminars, talk to groups, talk to clients. The number one is this concept of tithing. First, let me say that I don't personally believe in the hardcore rule of 1/10. I believe in the principle of tithing if you think tithing is giving out of the, as God increases you, as God brings business and money through your business, and then taking a portion of that and giving it away, okay? I fully believe in that, okay? But I cannot subscribe to the rule of 1/10 as a metric because it doesn't allow me to grow. It doesn't, you would struggle to find that in Scripture. In the New Testament, there are references to it, but contextually, you'd struggle to make that a rule. The Apostle Paul said something different. He said, purpose in your heart what you're going to give away and give it away with joy. So yes, I believe in giving. The problem I've got with it being 10% is it doesn't stretch you. It's not enough. It's just too much of an old covenant, a portion of my life mentality. And that's not replicated in any other area of my life. God doesn't say, okay, I want 10% of your time and 10% of your focus and 10% of your energy and 10% of your obedience. No. In the new covenant, it's all in 100%, and so our finances should be the same. So first and foremost, the way I would put it to you is this, and this came from Dave Balestri, who I had on the podcast recently. He's an amazing guy. He says, and I'll have to kind of paraphrase it on the spot, but he says something like, I would hate to be so uninterested in the kingdom of God that I was only interested in giving it 10%. Like what he's saying is, the kingdom of God is such a beautiful thing that just putting it into a little box of 10% just doesn't make sense. And so I kind of feel the same. He says it way better than I did, but it's kind of along those lines. Like, why would I be that disinterested in God that I'm only interested in giving him a fraction? So I understand giving, and I'm not suggesting that we're trying to get out of it for less. I'm saying it's nowhere near enough. You'll start out giving 10%. Then you'll want to go to 12 and 15 and 22 and 44 and 55. And then at some point later on in your life, you're probably going to want to give away all of the money that comes in through your business. 100% of it gets given away because you don't need any more. And that's when you pass the real test and mammon can't own you. So that's kind of the way I see it. And then you should a business tithe. A business itself has no obligation to tithe because it's not a person. A business is not under the stewardship of Jesus. You can put it there, of course. You can make it that, and it should be that. But there's no obligation for a business to tithe. So let me answer this. I guess, everybody is in a different space, and I've talked about money a lot on here. I personally think that the money that you draw from the business to live off, 100% you should be giving money out of that every single week, month, year, however you get paid, right? Because that's your own personal drawings, and you are liable for stewarding that money incredibly well, and some of that should be giving probably to your local church. And I say probably because I don't want to assume everybody has one, but if you're going to a church, go and get behind it, get amongst it, and start funding that. But I think if it's 10%, I think we've missed the mark because God will want to build enough of a relationship with us that we give over and above all of the time. So I don't think, I think that's it. Now, your business will produce a profit at some point, and then you will want to be giving out of that profit. But that can't be a rule either, because if you go through a massive growth phase, you're going to have to take some of your profit or all of your profit and plow it back into the business to fund the growth for the next stage. So at that point, you'll be able to give less money out of your business than you were if you just kept the profit and gave out of it, okay? But you're doing delayed gratification. You're investing in a business. You're using your gifts and talents in business to grow it. And then when you do that, you're going to have a bigger business, which produces a bigger profit, which means you can give more. How do you handle that journey? You just be led by the Spirit. What do you need to be doing right now? The Lord will show you how to apportion the money. Some of it goes to you, some of it goes to your church, some of it goes to whatever you need, to the business and so forth. So first of all, I would say be relaxed. There is grace all over this. You don't believe that if you give 9%, he's holding back a blessing. That's just not true. That's not my God. Of course, we want to have a response where we are generous people, and that amount of money should go up over our lives as our faith increases, as we see God move, as our business increases, and so forth, all right? But you have an obligation to be tithing/giving out of your personal income. You probably don't have an obligation to give out of your business, but I think we need to be giving out of our business because that's what shows the world a better way. So that's a long-winded way of saying you shouldn't stick to the rule of tithing, but I do believe 100% in giving, and I couldn't think of anything worse than only giving 10% of what God gives me back to him. It's too structured, it's too linear, it's nowhere near enough, and it doesn't stretch me. So it's always going to be way more than calculating 1/10. All right. I got a question here from Lisa. Lisa says, I got a small business in the country and it's been quiet lately. I'm thinking about joining a couple of business groups, maybe something like a BNI. As I'm only 1 hour from a major city, would it be more beneficial to join a group that is in a city opposed to one that is more local so I can tap into a greater market? Good question, Lisa. I'm a massive fan of BNI. I did 7 years of BNI when I first started in business. I think I joined back in 2003 to 2010. I think were the years that I did it, and still make money from my BNI today. So I'm a big fan of BNI. Lots and lots of money through it over the years. And it's a good system. Should you go to a major city where there's more? I guess it's case by case, Lisa, but I would be looking at the chapter that you've got right now. In my experience, BNI works best where you build depth in relationships, not necessarily width in numbers. Now, the ultimate goal, of course, is a big group where you go really deep with them. My concern would be driving an hour to be around more people would also put a strain on your ability to build deep relationships with those people, which is where BNI works best. So my thinking would be stay where you are local, build great relationships, because you can invest in them more. You can catch up for coffee at the drop of a hat. You can drop into each other's businesses. So you can build a lot more depth in your local area, and then stay in that area and get everybody in that group to build it out and get width. Use that local chapter to do a really good job. Let's say it's got 20 members. Well, why doesn't everybody turn it into 40 if they do a good job? And then they're probably the same size as the one in the bigger city. We haven't got to drive, and you've got better relationships and more trust and so forth. That would be like, based on the information, I'd be saying stay where you are, build depth in those, build power teams, work ways to collaborate, make strategic alliances, go deep with them. And that'll probably produce better in the long run than having the friction of, like, I've got to go drive another hour to have breakfast across town. So that's probably the way I would do it. All right, question. How do you recover from bankruptcy? This is a pointy one. We'll call this an anonymous question so that I don't want to embarrass anybody. How do you recover from bankruptcy? The first thing I would say to you, you right, Pat? The first thing I would say to you about recovering from bankruptcy is it's a mind game. You know, recovering from bankruptcy does have some practical elements to it, okay? You know, you lose your credit rating. You know, you probably have issues with getting suppliers and a whole bunch of other little knock-on effects. But to me, they're only tactics on how you get around those. To me, the bigger issue is the case that we can build within ourselves and start to believe a story And if we run that story for long enough while we're having a pity party, then it will become the story that's true to us. And at that point, we are our own worst enemy. So I would say to you, if you've been bankrupt, first and foremost, I mean, you would be put into a category that would make you far more likely to have business success than those that haven't. I mean, big business success. You know, statistically, our most successful business people in the world have been through bankruptcy or Chapter 11 or whatever, whichever country you're in. So I wouldn't be put off by it. I also wouldn't let it rule me. What we have to, in our mind, be able to take that event and put it into a little box in our mind and hold it off over to the side. Otherwise, it will cloud our entire judgment and we'll be beating ourselves. And so here's typically what happens. If you've been through bankruptcy, then you start a business again. The first time things start to get hard or you make a bad decision or a bad call, then the conversation starts. See, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to be terrible. This is going to lead to bankruptcy. This is so embarrassing. I've got shame on me from last time. We have to learn to go, okay, bankruptcy was a thing. I'm going to park that over to the side. And I'm going to stop the conversations inside of my mind. We just talked about how do you need to be able to rule your own spirit. You need to catch the language. We play an exercise when we coach our clients, and it's a game called Fact Meaning. And we do these exercises, and we teach our clients that there is a difference between a fact that turns up in our life and the meaning that you and I get to associate to it, okay? And there are facts that happen all day long. There are a million facts that turn up in your life. Most of them don't mean anything. They're not heavy. They don't have any gravity to them, but there are millions of facts. The fact is I'm wearing a blue jacket. The fact is it's currently, 4:22 in New South Wales. The fact is, that whatever happened, it's overcast today. There's a million of those facts, and they don't matter. But sometimes facts pop up that you can't control, and we can very easily get caught into default thinking. And it's the same thinking we've always done, and it's usually the thinking that our parents did. And that's a real worry. And we need to be able to learn to stopgap. So when a fact turns up that's heavy, we need to be able to put a pause in between the fact turning up and the meaning we are going to associate with it. Because if we don't learn to put a pause in there, we will attach the default meaning to the fact, and that won't be one that helps you because you didn't actually think it through. So, we as human beings have thousands of thoughts, every minute, and 80% of them are the same as yesterday's. And that's the same our whole life. We run the same racket usually unless we interrupt it. And that's what this exercise does, okay? So let me just use an example here. If a fact turned up that said, I went to an important meeting today and there was traffic, then somebody might make a meaning of, bloody council should fix their roads. Somebody else might make a meaning that says, I need to learn to leave 5 minutes earlier. Somebody else might have a meaning that says, I really need to pray in case that person has an accident. And somebody else might say, whatever, I need to work harder and get my helicopter, right? So everybody would have a different meaning to the same fact. Some of those will propel you forward and some of those will pull you back. So if the fact turns up, right, that I've been bankrupt, now what are the possible meanings that I could attach to something like that? One of them is, I'm a loser, right? One of them is, I'm one step closer to becoming a millionaire. One of them would be, business is impossible. One of them could be, everyone is out to rip me off, okay? One of them could be, I've just worked out one way not to go to market, okay? Now, what's interesting about those is that one and that one will move you forward, and these ones will propel you backwards. And so I guess that's what I mean by being able to think this through and actually saying, well, actually, when the conversation starts in my mind that reminds me that bankruptcy was a thing, I need to be able to take that thought into captivity, put a pause there, come up with a better meaning for it, and it'll move me forward. Over time of doing that, of learning that discipline, your default thinking becomes better thinking. Because the more often you have a thought, the more often it becomes your dominant thought, and then you don't have to work through all of this. But there's usually a period of time when you do. And this is the same process, whether you've been bankrupt, whether you've been divorced, whether you suck at employing, whether, whatever the issue has been in your life, something that could possibly haunt you, it's the same exercise. All right, we need to be able to spot the fact, put a stopgap in, and actually think about and decide what's a better meaning for me to attach to this, and a better meaning to actually drive me forward and not anchor me back to the past. And so that, I reckon that's the number one game for, what do you do after you've been bankrupt? You've got to learn to take those thoughts into captivity, because otherwise they'll haunt you forever. And we're not trying to do some weird voodoo try and make the thing go away. We acknowledge the fact that it was a real event and it did happen, but it happened back in happened back in 2018. I don't need to still be hanging on to a 2018 event in 2019, 2020, 2021, whatever. You can go under bankruptcy protection for a reason. And one of my favorite things to do, actually, and this won't work in every case, but one of my favorite things to do is to find the creditors who were legitimate. The ones that couldn't insure against themselves. Like big suppliers have normally insured themselves against creditors who don't pay and stuff like that. So they're normally looked after. Governments, they're fine. It's the small business people where they might have been left out. I think it's a really good idea to go to them and say, I'm sorry, I never intended to go bankrupt, never intended for this not to work. I owe you money, I can't pay you, but I'm going to build a business over the next 5 years and I intend to pay you back. You will blow people's mind if you go and do that. Blow people's mind if you go and do that. Plus, it releases you from the pain of the past, because you don't have an obligation to go fix it. That's what bankruptcy protection's for. But I think from a moral perspective, if you go and do that, it'll put a spring in your step, and you can write that. So you just got to learn to master your mind. That's the short answer. When the conversation pops up, when I'm not good enough, I'm going to do it again, this is haunting me, you've got to learn to rule those thoughts. Because if you do the action that moves you away from bankruptcy and you can control your mind, it's only a matter of time before you build a great business. And it's a hard journey. It would be much easier if you could just wipe the software of your mind and start again. But the only way to do that is to change your dominant thinking, and then you will win. All right, one more question for fun. All right, what is the best way for a beginner to get their social media marketing going? There are so many courses advertised, free to quite expensive, handouts to diplomas, etc. Good question, Debbie. Where do you start? I mean, there are countless courses. I mean, if we're talking here about organic posting, like just posting on our platforms and letting people find it organically, you really should not pay for a course, because no one is going to be able to tell you how your industry is best viewed on certain platforms. The only way you can go and do that is to go and produce 100 pieces of different content, throw them onto all the platforms, and let the market tell you which one they like. You can work that out, because there'll be more comments, likes, and shares on that one than anything else. And then you can start to get a picture of what they like, and then just produce more of that. Okay. When it comes to paid advertising on social media, that's a little bit different. You can go to YouTube right now and type in Facebook custom conversion ads 2019, because you've got to make sure they're relevant. Look at anything that's in the last 3 to 4 months and consume that content for free and start making your own ads. You can do that. I'm actually a pretty big fan of doing that. Here's what I would never do. I would never spend thousands of dollars on a Facebook ads course. And I say that because it's not that nobody can bring you value. They might be able to. The problem I've got is it's still theory at the end of the day, and now you've still got to go put it into practice. For me, the way I did it in 2013, 14, was I just decided that I couldn't find anybody to tell me the truth. I'd look at this person's course and they'd tell me one thing. This person's course, the direct opposite. I was like, stuff you like. You're just out selling courses. I'm just going to spend the money on ads and see what works. And so what I did was I went and run 50 different campaigns with 50 different images, 50 different videos, 50 different headlines, different call to actions, driving to different pages. And I gave $20, $30 to all of them, and I just ran them over a period of 18 months. And I was able to chart, this one works well, this one works well, this one works well. And when I saw something that worked well, I just gave it more money, because the market told me they like it, and it exploded. What that allowed me to do, by getting in there, rolling up my sleeves and doing the work, What that allowed me was the knowledge that now I don't have to outsource. Why? Because I know how to do it in-house. Now if I do outsource, nobody can pull the wool over my eyes, because I probably know more than any agency in Australia, because I've spent my own money and done enough campaigns over so many years that I understand human behavior. So how do you get started? I reckon that the best thing you can do is start running your own ads, produce your own content, run your own ads, and see what happens. I wouldn't be looking around for somebody to shortcut the journey for me with their knowledge. The only people that I know of that are actually doing quite a good job of teaching people, for example, Facebook and Instagram ads, they're going to charge you $10,000 to $15,000 for their knowledge. Now, that could be worth it if you run a large business and you want to shortcut the journey, but if you're starting out in business, it's a terrible use of your money. You should put half of that towards ads, because then at least you actually get traffic for your money. You're not just giving it to somebody else for theory. You can actually burn through that money, half of that money, and the market will respond, and now you got money back because it's going to work. So I guess just go and get amongst it is the short answer. Go and start running ads. Put little budgets towards lots of campaigns, see what the market tell you, and keep running more of what works. It's always been the way it is, and it's always going to be the way it goes. Okay, I'd go and get free help through YouTube or something like that, but I certainly would not be paying thousands of dollars for somebody's social media marketing course when you need to learn how to do it yourself. Okay, one of the things that we do an intake every single year, and we handhold people through a program of growing their business, from positioning their business to marketing it, to making it unique, to building out 12 marketing pillars, to selling those into high-paying customers, to systemizing their business and recruiting their team. Like, we do all of that. But when it comes to marketing, we don't do it for them. When I teach somebody how to do Facebook ads, it's click by click, page by page. Then we circle back. How do you read the data? Then we circle back. What's happening so we can report? Then we circle back. And my whole goal is that I want you to be able to run your ad campaigns without me. That's what you need to find. Because if you don't know how to run them yourself, you can't hold anybody accountable to doing it for you without them trying to probably rip you off. So that's the way I would handle it. Well, legends, that's episode 58 in the can. There will not be a Thursday episode because I am flying down to Melbourne to speak at the one of the Melbourne chapters of the Kingdom Business Network, which is going to be good fun. So if you go onto that, I'll see you down there. Otherwise, I'll be back on Monday with episode 59. See ya.